Hello folks, welcome to Understanding Google Cloud Foundation. And today I'm really excited to go through this course because we're really gonna get that understanding of Google Cloud from a foundational level. And what does that mean exactly? Well, the question I have for you is, what is a Google Cloud digital leader? Because that's what this course is all about. And a cloud digital leader understands and can explain how cloud solutions benefit an organization. So the question you may have is, okay, what do I need to learn? Basically, just general Google Cloud knowledge. And that's what the focus of this course is all about. And we're honestly just going to be focused on the exam guide from the Cloud Digital Leader. And it's going to be specifically on section 2. Okay, so I know the next question you have is, okay, who is this for and what do I need to know? Is it for salespeople? How about project managers? Of course, engineers, architects, anyone who is anybody. And that's who this course is designed for. Bare bones, general Google Cloud knowledge. If you want to learn, this is the place to be. Let's head into the course. All right, so let's get started and let's talk about Google Cloud compliance. And to be honest, compliance, it just means a lot of different things to different people. When you're talking about standards and governance, law, rules, of course, these things all fall under compliance. And for me personally, working in the industry for as long as I have, I've noticed that depending on what organization you work at, certain things mean a lot more than others, right? And the idea with this whole section and learning the Google Cloud Digital Leader content is to really understand where to find this information and how you can get records and documents and so forth so that you are making sure you're doing your due diligence that Google Cloud is the best option for you. So that's first going to start off with the Google Cloud Compliance Resource Center and the compliance standards. And then we're also going to kind of look a little bit at some of these regional compliance offerings. So let's jump into that real quick just so you get a good insight on how to find this information. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is if you go to cloud.google.com/security/compliance, you'll get to this Compliance Resource Center. And when you're scrolling down here, you can see a lot of different things. And the one thing I want to point out from the beginning is the offerings by region. And that's very important because just depending on where you're located, this is going to show you what's available and what standards that Google's able to meet where you are. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the USA because that's where I'm located. And when we come into these offerings, some of the ones that stand out to me, and I personally had an opportunity to work with, things like the Criminal Justice Information Services. There's some tools within Google Cloud that meet those standards called CJIS. FedRAMP is a huge one. So if I click on FedRAMP, these are all about the federal government, Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. And to be honest with you, if you're working at a federal agency and an application or a service is in FedRAMP, actually you're going to have a very good chance of being able to use it because more and more federal agencies are moving to basically, if you're not FedRAMP certified, you can't use it. So I'm looking at these services here. You can see the admin console, you can see Cloud DNS, Cloud Identity, various Google Cloud services that have a high rating. And then you have some that have a moderate. And there's just different levels overall to the FedRAMP system and how you can use these different products and services. You'll also see Google Workspace down here as well. So Google Workspace from a moderate perspective. Next, let's go back and look at the Compliance Report Manager. Now, when you come in here, you can look and download specific compliance documents. So if I go by the industry, and let's say government, public sector, I'll just say globally. And if I just pick both of those, well, there's nothing global for both. So if I uncheck global, we're going to see there's audit reports, some things here in Spain. You're going to see all kinds of information. And it really just going to depend on where you're located. If I go to global, here's a certificate on ISO, 27001, 2013. And then it gives you the standards and the ISO info. And from here, you can actually just come on in and you could download this if you need it. The actual report. So if we go back a page and if I click this checkbox, I can just click download. And then once I download it, it's going to give me a zip file. You'll actually be able to see the certificate of the standard where Google meets it. So this was issued back in May of this year. So that gives you a good example of how you can find this information where you can download documents. So if you're working with the legal department or you're working with some of your regulators or auditors and you need to provide this, well, this is where you go to get it. And that's exactly what you need to know about Google Cloud compliance for the Cloud Digital Leader. I'll see you in the next section. So as you're looking at this screen here, you're just looking at that image. It's really just representing what a cloud computing environment would look like because you have your whole environment, which is represented by that blue cloud, and you see all the different resources and devices that are plugging into it. So with that being said, let's jump into a demo. And now what we're looking at is inside the Google Cloud Console, we're looking at the resource hierarchy section. And here, what we're going to go through is projects and folders so you can understand what they look like. But as I scroll down here, let's look at this image first, because this is really going to help you understand it better. Here's a sample resource hierarchy. So you have all these different folders. You see an organizationexample.com at the top, your non-prod, your production, or some environment folders on that second level. Underneath it, you're going to see these various departments. So let's say you're working in a financial organization and maybe you have your billing department, maybe it's a CFO department, maybe on the production side you have an IT department, what may have you. You can see how all those are broken up in those different departments. And then when you get down underneath that, you see the different teams. And then from there, you have the actual projects within GCP themselves. And we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. So as we come out of here, we want to look at how you're going to plan to set this up, right? Because it's important to lay this out in such a way that makes sense so that when you are setting up resources and you're setting your projects up within GCP, it makes some logical sense, right? When you're looking at your engineering and marketing teams, you know where to find them, what type of resources they're using. And as we scroll down through this section here, the next step in this is to create the initial folders of the resource hierarchy. And then from there, you would set up the initial projects. And then you want to make sure the projects themselves are linked to the appropriate billing accounts. And you'll see that down here at step 4. Now, talking about a project, let's kind of talk a little bit more about that. If we click on that at the top, this is the lowest level of all the hierarchies. It has all your resources, such as your virtual machines. It has your databases. So when we click on this section here, you're going to see it's some good explanation here to explain like what this resource is. But if we go back, I wanted to show you here. Let's see, specify your. Here you go. Here's a good example. When you're looking at this site here, it's showing you, hey, a general recommendation is to have one project per application per environment. So what's cool about that is if you have an application 1 and 2 in your dev and prod, then you'd have 4 projects: app 1 dev, app 1 prod, app 2 dev, and app 2 prod. So that basically helps you isolate all your environments, keeps it separate so that you know exactly what you're working with and you know what projects you're working in. And it's really just going to help make things a lot clearer. And then lastly, when you go back to, let's look at the folders. The folders allow you to group everything, like I mentioned earlier, but it really groups the projects underneath. And it's really good to really, in a big organization especially, to keep, set folders up so that you can put, let's say, those apps 1 and 2 under, let's say, maybe the development team. That would be a folder, and then you'd have those apps under the development team. So that's something to be aware of when looking at the folder resource. And it just gives you that more isolation and more boundaries between the different projects you've set up. Okay, in this next section, let's talk about managing identity and access management. Now, this is a great section to learn and just an overall wonderful topic for those of you that like dealing with accounts and security, because we're going to answer the question together: who can do what on which resource? And when you're looking at these images pop up, you're going to have a user, then you're going to have access, and then you're going to have the resource. Now, thinking about this user on the far left-hand side, that could be an account, it could be a group, it could be a service account, which is a different type of user account. So there's a lot of different things that can actually have access to something within GCP. But ultimately, it goes back to the question is, who can do what on which resource? And so what we're going to do now is jump into the console again. And I want to show you more about resource access. Now, we're going through this setting up the foundation within GCP. And as we're doing this, I want you to keep in mind here that what we're doing in this particular task is we're setting up IAM policies, which means identity and access management. And as we scroll down, this is very key to understand this topic, because when we talked about the resource hierarchy earlier, that was really talking about how to set everything up from a foundation, from departments and so forth. This is actually going into how you're giving access to it. So from here, we're going to go down and let's look at the first thing here. And I really like to point this one out. Let's look at this one here, particularly here, right here in the middle. So this GCP network admins group. So what we could do is we can take this group, which could actually have some users in it, and we would give them this role. And what this GCP network admins group will give them access to is the ability to control the networks with the compute network admin, so they can create and modify, delete network and resources. They can do all the networking stuff except for firewall rules and SSL certificates. That falls more on the security end. It also can create shared VPCs, which is basically more of a shared resource for networking. You can also have a compute security admin is what it's going to have. And that actually includes the ability to delete, create firewall rules and SSL certs. And then the resource manager folder viewer. So this role also can view folders. So anybody that I make a member of this group is going to automatically have access to this if I go ahead and click grant access here. With that being said, if I scroll down, here's some other best practice from a Google perspective to set you up with. Here's a security one that's going to give you all these additional roles. So let's say the organizational policy from the organization policy admin, that gives the permission you can set organization level cloud IAM policy. So it's a very high level role there, or permission, that's going to give you access to grant any permission you want at the organization level. And then also when you're looking at the policy viewer, you can view it. I mean, this person can view all the security policies and the cloud IAM rules for all the resources in the entire organization. And then one other key one I'll point out with this one is, it also, if we scroll down here to the bottom, when you see BigQuery Data Viewer, it will grant permission for BigQuery datasets. So if somebody has databases set up and they're creating data and processing data and analyzing it within BigQuery, this role is going to have the ability to go into it and view it and get some insights on it, understand what's going on. And we'll scroll down a little more, and let's just say you wanted a real kind of like a basic role, like somebody just to view folders. Maybe it's an auditor of some sort, or maybe someone at your organization just needs to know how your folders are set up. Well, you can give them this resource manager role for the folder viewer, and they can view all the folders. So just maybe it's an executive and they want to see how the organization is set up. This would be a good role for them. And then what we just talked about there, that's at the very, very high level at the top, right? The organization level. And then from here, we would then go to the folder level. And the folders could have different policies than the organization. And you just keep going down. And the idea with this whole section of this course is really just to understand, okay, you have your resource hierarchy that we talked about earlier. And then now we're getting down into the actual managing the identity and the access underneath that resource hierarchy that we've already set up. So you would go down here through folders, and then from there, if I hit continue, we would get down to the actual projects themselves and who has access to those and what they can do with them. So hopefully this makes a lot of sense. I'm also going to go back here and click on this Cloud IAM policies. And if you look at this is right on Google Cloud's webpage. You're going to see here that this is a good example of showing you a policy, and it shows you the members, which is a Google account, which could be any Gmail account. It could be an account that's not a Gmail account, but maybe let's say you're using a yahoo.com email and you create a Google account with it. So you don't have to be using Gmail. It could be a service account, which could be used to set up applications or to do different things within an application. And that adding into that compute image role, image user, that's going to allow that actual account to have the ability to use a particular compute engine image, which is great because let's say you need to use a particular version of Linux, and okay, this person, you want to give access to those in this Google account and the service account. And then from there, you'll see the same thing with the Google Workspace and the Google Group. Those could be more members. And let's say they need the compute instance admin. And then that ties into the IAM, as you can see here in the middle of the screen. And when you're looking at the organization, you'll see the folder, you see the project, and then it gets down to the resource. So that gives you a nice flow of how these things are set up, and you can bind these different things together. You can take several different permissions, put them together, and then control who has access to which resource. So hopefully this makes sense. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome to the next section, Google Cloud Billing Fundamentals. Now in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to learn a lot about just the basic fundamental billing setup within GCP. But before we even get there, let's just start off with a question. And that question is, what are cloud billing accounts? And a billing account, ultimately, it just holds all the information for who's paying for Google Cloud resources in the projects you've set up. And it's also linked to every single project, resource, or even organization that you can have within GCP as well. So let's take a high level look at it. So if you look at your billing account, You can then attach it to an organization, and that really just applies to those of you who are working in a big enterprise organization and you have several users and several projects. So it's really designed for that type of environment. And then if you're not in that environment, the GCP project, which you would actually set up to be able to provision any type of resource, which would ultimately get you down to something like a virtual machine or a database. So ultimately the database is connected to a GCP project, which could be a part of an organization. And if it isn't, it all ties back to the billing account. So that billing account is what you need to be able to do anything within GCP, even the free services and the free tier. So we definitely want to make sure you understand that. And then the next part of this, I want to talk about the section of the exam guide, which you're going to learn throughout the rest of this section. Section 2.3. So we're going to be talking about how you can understand, basically we're going to describe how you control and optimize all your GCP costs. We're also going to talk about the different billing models and how they apply to different service classes. And then we're also going to learn more about the consumption-based use model, which applies to GCP and other public cloud providers. And then also this last one here, we're talking about the discounts. Now, a lot of you love to save money, myself included. So really pay attention here because you want to definitely know how you can take advantage of these committed use discounts and sustained use and flat rate discounts. So what we're going to do now is looking at this GCP console. We are part of an organization in this demo, but I want you to keep in mind that you're looking at the billing setup. And the reason why this is recommended to go through this process is just so that you make sure you check all the boxes so that you don't have any surprises when it's come time for billing and you know where to find this information. So the first thing we want to do is let's scroll down a little bit and look at some of these steps. So you have to create an online billing account, or you can have invoice billing, or you can use an existing billing account. Now, for most people, they're going to be setting up an online billing account. However, if you're a rather large organization, you'd probably look at setting up this invoice billing, which would be the second option here. And every month you would get invoiced on that amount. From there, once you choose that, so I chose online, then you're going to automatically see create billing account. So once I click on it, it's going to take you to a screen. You're going to go ahead and fill in all the information here. And once you fill it out, you're ultimately going to get to a screen that's going to give you an account number. And you're also going to have the ability to see cost breakdowns of any type of resource you've been running in GCP. How to understand resource usage. Now I'm excited about this part because one of the mysteries of all cloud and Google Cloud as well is how are you paying for this stuff? And let's jump into the Google Cloud website here. And I want to take two different resources within GCP and just kind of break down how you pay for this. So Google Cloud SQL, the pricing ultimately works a lot like Compute Engine, meaning that you see down here as I scroll down, you're choosing the CPU and memory, and you can choose up to 96 CPUs and 624 gigabytes of memory. Ultimately, what that means is you're actually paying for however many CPUs you choose and memory. So when we scroll down here, you're going to see the different pricing, and this is based on hourly use. And you're also going to see there's commitment discounts from 1 year to 3 year. But the key thing with all of this, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, is that you're actually going to pay for every single second that instance is running. So anytime you're using a resource that's set up like this, that's using this type of model where it's by the hour or it's by the year commitment, there's monthly pricing as well. If I click on this little toggle button, you'll see what the price is per month, per different type of component of this server that we're going to be setting up. That's what you're going to pay. In contrast, if we go over and look at something like Google BigQuery, this is completely serverless. And what a serverless means is that you don't have to provision any instances or virtual machines to use BigQuery, which is nice. So all that memory and choosing your CPU and storage, you don't have to do any of that because you only pay as you use it. And so what that means is if I scroll down here a little bit, the two main components are analysis pricing and storage pricing. Now storage, if you store data within BigQuery, you're going to pay for however much storage you use. And if I click on this link, it's going to tell me there's the pricing 0.0 to 20 cents per gigabyte. And then if I go back up here and look at the analysis pricing, this is just based off of every time you run a query. So it's based on the actual bytes processed by each query. So the first terabyte of every month is free. So depending on what you're doing, you actually could pay nothing to use BigQuery at all, just depending on how much data you're analyzing when you use it. And that's called on demand. Now there's another option, and it's called flat rate pricing. And this is something where you work out a deal with Google, you work on some type of contract, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to be able to use BigQuery for a certain amount of time, or a certain time per month, whether it's monthly or annually, whatever it may be. So that's how usage works in GCP, depending on what type of service you're using. Let's move on to the next section. All right, so this is a very popular topic coming up next, and that's billing optimization strategies. Just think of it as cost reduction, but more importantly, when you're looking at cost and value within GCP, you're trying to find that balance, whether you're a big enterprise or whether you're a small developer working on an application, you're trying to find that right balance. And ideally, everyone wants to be able to lower cost. So let's kind of go over a few options here to do that within GCP. First thing, let's look at right sizing. Now, right sizing is a way that you can optimize all your workloads by basically reducing some of the hardware you're using or just overall the utilization of it. And for the first thing, what we want to do, let's take a look at what that looks like in the console. First thing, this is what Google shows you on the web page here. So when you go to the Google Cloud docs for VM instances, you're going to see down here in the middle of the screen where it says recommendation, and you'll see that pop up on your VM instances page. So if I were to click on this link, it's not going to show anything because I don't have any instances running. But had I had an instance running in here, I actually would see recommendations to lower costs based on how I was using those resources. So it's definitely something you definitely want to take a look at and keep an eye on when you're using GCP. The next option we want to talk about is discounts. Now there's a lot of different discounts you can take advantage of within GCP. One is sustained use discounts, and that one is basically if you use a product for an extended amount of time, you'll actually pay a lower cost on it. And there's also committed use discounts where you're going to say, hey, I'm going to use this for 1 or 3 years and get a bigger discount based on committing to that usage over that period of time. So looking at the sustained use discount, you can see here there's a lot of different options here in the sense that the vCPUs and the memory, all those you can actually get discounts on just depending on how long you use it. And when you come here, I would always recommend coming to the Google Cloud Sustained Use Discounts page because it's going to give you the latest and up-to-date information. But the key thing is that you can get up to 30% off. So that's something to really be aware of. And it has a nice breakdown here of depending on how you use the resource, whether it's 25% of the time up to 100% of the time, you can see it's a 40% off base rate for some of this N1 standard one instance type. So that's something to kind of keep in mind and how you can save some money within GCP. The next thing is called a committed use discount. Now here you can see I can actually sign up for a commit. I can name this anything I want, and I'll just type in save money because we all want to save some money. And you're looking at the region, you can see the different type of CPU you want to use or just the generation. There's E2, there's N1. It gives you some pricing and details here on the right side as I choose those. But the key thing to keep in mind here is that if I choose a 1 or 3 year, you can see how I can save money doing this. So I'm going to be able to save money because I'm committing to this period of time. And then also, if I were to click on a license committed use discount, if you're a big enterprise and you're doing something with SAP, currently there are some options for that as well. So there's the SLES 12 for SAP and SLES 15 for SAP, and that tells you the different types, how many CPUs, how many licenses you're going to need, to purchase for that software. So these are some excellent ways you can actually just save money by if you know you're going to be using these resources over a particular period of time. Definitely take advantage of these. And the last thing is enabling guardrails. And basically, this is where getting knowledge of what's running in your environment is really key. So within the GCP console here, I'm in a billing account here, and if I go down to budgets and alerts, you can see the different alerts I have set up, some different test ones I've got going on. But the key thing is that when I create a budget, I can actually get different types of alerts. Let's just say I'll make a new name for this one. I'll say budget alert. And I could say this, it could be monthly, yearly, quarterly, it could be a custom range. So I'll just say for this month. And if I scroll down here, I'll remove discounts and promotions. You can kind of see costs right there that just showed up. And then I'll hit next. And then from here, I could say, okay, anything, let's say over $25, I can set this up. Hey, once I reach 50% of that, I can have a trigger. And what that trigger is going to do is that it's going to ultimately send a notification to all the billing admins and users. And from there, you can do some more advanced things, but for the purpose of the Cloud Digital Leader is really just knowing about how you can set up budget alerts, and then I can add in different, more thresholds here. Just a certain percentage of the budget that's used. I can kind of set it like between a forecast as well. So you have a lot of different options here, and once you set this up, I get these messages all the time where say, hey, you've reached X amount of your budget, and then you can go ahead and take action on that. There's some ways you can automate that as well, but for the purpose of the Cloud Digital Leader, it's really just knowing what are your options, how do you keep track of your budget, how do you set alerts, and this is how you do it within GCP. All right, on to the next section, breaking down Google's network. Now, in this video, we're going to take a high-level look at the GCP network infrastructure, and then we're also going to look into regions and zones and multi-regional resources within GCP. But the first thing I'd like to do is give you a broader view on how GCP's network is set up, and we're going to do that by going directly to Google Cloud's webpage. Once you get to their webpage here, you're going to see all the cloud locations. It's really cool. It's a nice visualization because what I really like about it is that you're seeing the regions, the zones, network edge locations, countries, territories, all this good stuff. But what stands out to me the most is when you scroll down to this map, and this map is continuously being updated. Honestly, when I just looked at it again today, I just saw that there's 2 more regions coming here in the US with Dallas, and you have another one coming into Columbus, Ohio. You also can see ones all over the world coming to Paris, Madrid, all kinds of places. And what's nice about this is that if you want the most up-to-date information, you're going to want to come to this webpage. Also, keep in mind, you see down here on the lower left-hand corner, each region with a blue dot has 3 zones. And what those 3 zones indicate, those are actual data centers in that region. And the white dots are the future zones that we were just talking about, ones that are coming in the future. But one standout out of all these is the one in Iowa, and that's US Central 1. That has actually 4 zones, so 4 data centers there. So those are your regions. And then when you click on network, this shows you all the traffic, essentially, as far as how the cables are laid out, the submarine cables, also the investments for future ones as well. So you're just seeing a lot of information here. If you're into networking and things like that, this is really cool to look at. And it's also, if you really want to dig deeper, there's several other articles and other topics you can learn a lot more about networking, but this just gives you a nice visualization of it overall. So taking a quick step back, in this section, we're looking at section 2.4 of the exam guide. So regions, zones, regional resources, zonal resources, and multi-regional resources. And that's going to be the next section we're going to jump into coming up next. Understanding zonal, regional, multi-regional, and global resources within GCP. So the first thing, let's talk about zonal resources, right? Because these are very common and you'll come across this frequently when you're using Google Cloud, especially if you're using compute engine virtual machines, because those are zonal resources, meaning that they exist in that particular zone that you create them in, and that's what is required when you set them up. And the same thing can be said about the persistent disk, which are the actual hard drives where you store information. When you create these compute engine virtual machines, those stay within that zone as well. But when you look at regional and global resources, some examples of this are static external IP addresses. So basically, those could be regional. I could create an IP address for an application that I've created, and that could be accessed directly to that particular region where that IP address was created. And then when you look at the VPC network as a whole, which we'll look at here in a moment, that network setup is a global resource, meaning it could be accessed all over the world. So I can set up a network and you'll be able to reach that no matter where you are in the entire world. So those are the differences between the zonal and regional and the global resources. But it's no fun unless we look a little bit deeper at a brief demo in the Google Cloud Console. Okay, so we're in a Google Cloud project, and now what I want to do, let's just search for VPC networks at the top. It's much faster to do it that way. And when we click on that, what you're going to see is the whole network that I was just showing you on the website, all set up automatically when this project was created. And the reason why I want to show you this, you can see US Central 1, Europe West 1, you can see all these regions and zones all set up with networks and IP addresses all the way down here to the bottom. And what's great about this is that that was done as soon as I created this VPC network within GCP. Well, you might also be asking, okay, so what does that mean for my zonal resources and regional resources? Well, we'll jump there in a second, but this is where that global resource comes into play. This VPC network is a global resource, and as you can see here, it can connect to all these different data centers, regions, zones, all that good stuff all across the world. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to go into Compute Engine. And the reason we're going to go into Compute Engine is because I want you to be able to see how you can choose your regions and zones when you're setting up a VM instance. So once we come in here, we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to click on create instance. And as soon as I click on create, you're going to see the region. I can choose Iowa, I can choose Toronto, Northern Virginia, and you can see now these are the data centers I can choose from. So those are classified as the zones we talked about earlier. And then from there, if I scroll down, you also can change and set up your boot disk, which is where the disk will be located as well. Because once I create this same disk will be located in this same zone and region that we're creating it. And then once that's all set up, you're going to see the price and cost and so forth here on the right hand side. These are just estimates, but this is what a zonal resource looks like within GCP. Now let's look at a regional resource. So we're going to go to VPC network, and then we're going to go over to external IP addresses. So external IP address is where you could reserve it. Let's say you have an application, what may have you, and you need to use this so that your customer can have access to your application. I'll just put in the test name here. And as you can see, as I scroll down, the type, it could be a regional or global. So if I choose regional, it's going to be placed in the region I specify. As you can see here, there's no zones. You don't see the C, the A, B, C, D. You don't see any of that here. But if I click on global, you're going to just see it. Global just gets rid of all that, and it's going to be a global resource, from the beginning. So those are the differences between a regional and global resource within GCP. And then the last one I'd like to show you. Let's look at a multi-regional resource. Now this is pretty cool because this is something that can actually be in several regions at once. So I'm going to go to cloud storage, and I'm going to go ahead and create a bucket. And before I even name it, I'm just going to click on choose where to store your data. And this is where you're going to see the different options. So you're going to have multi-region. So this is multiple regions in the US, at least 3. The same thing with Europe, same thing with Asia Pacific. And then there's also a dual region where you can choose 2 different regions. And you can see the different options with that. Europe, you have Netherlands and Finland, Iowa and South Carolina for the US, Tokyo and Osaka for Asia Pacific. And then the region, you can choose a region as well. So this is a service that lets you do regional, dual region, and multi-region. So it really just depends on the type of service you're going to be using in GCP. And that ultimately determines where you can have this resource reside. And it gives you a lot of flexibility and just a lot more. It helps you with strategy when you're planning out how to build an application or you're trying to help a client decide where they should set their resources up. So with all that being said, let's go ahead back to the main page. And when we look at the same page where we saw the network, if you scroll down a little bit, I love this page because check this out. You're going to see each product and where it's available. So when I'm looking in America, if I scroll down here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit more so you can see that if I scroll down in West 1, Oregon, I can't use the Google Cloud VMware engine because it's not available in that region. But it is available in West 2. And you can see similar things as you go across. I drag it across, West 3, it's not there, West 4, but it's in Central 1. So the cool thing about this is depending on which service you're using, you definitely want to check where it's available. So if you have a lot of customers in a particular region, you can actually set it up and improve the performance of that application based on where they're located. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, if I scroll down a little bit further, you're going to see the global products. Now, the cool thing with these global products, as we were just talking about earlier, a little bit about some of the networking and things like that, cloud load balancers, the interconnect, things that are outside the scope of this course. But all of these things have no dependence on location at all. So these things down here, Cloud Shell, the logging, things of that nature, you can use these no matter where they're located. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about setting up GCP resources. And then also, if I click on multi-region, this tab here, this is going to show you all the products that are available in multiple regions. So if we're looking at container registry, if you're looking at cloud healthcare APIs in the US only, things like that, you can see where all these things reside. Cloud Spanner is a big one. You can see where it has all these multiple different regions. You can set it up. Cloud storage, I showed you, BigQuery. So these are those items and these products and services that give you that multi-region flexibility. And it's really helpful because, like I said earlier, you could really cover a wide audience and a wide customer base when they're using GCP. Google Cloud support options. Now, this is an exciting section just simply for the fact that if you need help with GCP, we've got you covered. And how do we have you covered? Well, let's look directly at Google Cloud's website and look at all the different support options that are available to you. So if you go to cloud.google.com/support, what you're going to find is a customer care portfolio. Now, Google has revamped this over the years, and I want to point out to it, if you scroll down the middle, it's going to break down all your customer care offerings. And these are your support options within GCP. And for the exam, you definitely need to understand which one you'd want to use depending on the situation you're in or just the type of service you need for that application or whatever you're trying to build on GCP. Now, the first one, the basic support, is free. Everyone gets it. Basically, you can put in case, phone, and chat support for billing issues. So you can open up those support cases for that. But when you start paying for it, the $29 plus 3% net spend, that's when you can get standard support. So this covers some more items here. You don't necessarily need to know every single thing, but the key things here, you do get case support for technical issues. And then P2 cases, you have a 4-hour initial response time. So basically, you're paying to get things resolved quicker. And then the enhanced support, and they're even doing a promotion here at the time of this recording for 50% off. But ultimately, this one is a 50% discount. It's usually $500 a month for that one. And that just gives you more cloud support API, things of that nature. And then the last one is the premium support. Now, if you're an enterprise, you're probably going to have this. If you don't, especially if you don't have your own staff, or depending on how huge your staff is that works on GCP, you could use this for some of your critical workload. So I like the breakdown with this. It's much simpler than it was in the past because you do have, the basic all the way up to premium, and that pretty much covers all of the support options within GCP. The cool thing, also, I want to point out, if you click on calculate estimated cost, you can also see how much support would cost just depending on how much you spend on GCP. So if I came in here and put in, I'm spending, let's say $10,000, you could see the total estimated cost would be $329 for that 1 month. So it really just depends on how much you spend, on how much you'll pay as well. So if I deleted that and let's say I only spent $100, so it would cost $32. So that gives you an idea on what it would cost to use GCP support. Hope this makes sense. I'll see you in the next video. All right, welcome to the next section. And let's talk about SLAs. But first, of course, we got to ask you the question, what does SLA mean in regards to Google Cloud? And SLA is a service level agreement for those of you familiar with it and working in other industries. But when we're talking about Google Cloud in particularly, it's ultimately just an agreement based on a monthly uptime percentage on a covered Google Cloud service. And we're going to look deeper into that right now directly on the Google Cloud webpage so you can see examples of what this looks like for a service that you may be interested in using. So we're going to search for Google Cloud Service Level Agreements. And right on this page, you're going to see all the different services within Google that have service level agreements. Keep in mind, there's going to be things that are generally available to you. So if it's a beta product, it doesn't have any type of SLA on it. But let's just, for an example, let's pick a popular one and we'll scroll down. Let's look at cloud storage. Now, what I like about this is it pretty much breaks down exactly what you're getting as far as a monthly uptime percentage. And this is what Google's basically saying, that if your data is in a storage class at multi-region or dual region, you're going to get 99.95% is the monthly uptime percentage. Now, if it goes below that, what happens is that Google can provide you with financial credits as described below. And there's a lot of details on this website. But the bottom line is to keep in mind, you do have to request this. It's just not automatic. But what's good about it is that if you're using a service, you can be, and it's on this SLA list, you can be assured that you're going to have some type of guarantee that it's going to be working as you would expect it to. And if it does not, you can get this financial credit based on the outage that may have happened. Also, you can look for Google Cloud Dashboard. And if you look at that, you can see the status of all the different services from a Google perspective. And this can kind of help you understand too, how long something has been up or down. If there's any type of outage, then it would show up here. And that also can kind of keep you up to speed on what's been down or if there's having an issue with some type of service. And there's also the ability to see that in the Google Cloud Dashboard as well. So if you're on the Google Cloud homepage, sometimes you can see things that show right here in this right-hand corner where it says Google Cloud Platform Status. So it says all services are normal. So you're all set. So that pretty much wraps up what an SLA is, how to find it. And just keep in mind, if you need any more info, just go back to the Google Cloud SLA terms page and you can check out the SLAs for all the different services here. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. We've reached the end of this course. I really hope you enjoyed it. Taking a step back to the beginning and looking at this Google Cloud Digital Leader and looking at the exam guide and what you need to know, you're seeing we covered today general Google Cloud knowledge, which covers about 25 to 35% of the exam. For next steps, I definitely recommend reviewing some sample questions. I've included some here on this course. There's also some on Google Cloud's page that you can take a look at. There's also a learning hub and certification hub that you can look at, get you some more information. And as you can see here, you can go ahead and register for it, $99. But as we take a scroll down on this page, going back to the exam guide, if you haven't gone through section 3 yet, I'd highly recommend you get up to speed on Google Cloud products and services. And this is going to go deeper into more of the topics that I touched on during this general course. So hopefully you got a lot out of this. Hopefully I'll see you online on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching. Take care.